Good evening, everyone. This is Reading for Charity again. Another book review for the Reading for Archie event that we're doing. Reading 100 books in a year to raise money for the Archie Foundation, which is a fantastic charity that helps kids in the northeast of Scotland. We've raised £750 for them so far, and hoping to raise some more by the end of this. If you want to donate, please do. There'll be links in the descriptions of the videos on YouTube and Twitch. But today's review is The Black Company, which is, they're not massive, but they're 320 odd pages each, so middling in terms of the size of what we've been doing with this, and it's quite interesting in. Just checking these settings. Settings that seem off. No, it seems to be okay. Right. So middling in terms of the book size, but it's still been taking me a wee while to kind of jump through them all, just because they're quite involved. Some of the names are a bit all over the shop, so you need to just pay attention as you're reading. It's not like the Legacy of Har, which was just pulp and you could just read without actually having your brain massively engaged. You actually need to engage your brain when reading these books, so it's still getting through them. But the book itself, I was again really pleased with this book. I'd never heard of Glenn Cook. I'd never heard of the Black Company books. I read a lot of fantasy, oddly enough, a lot of fantasy, a lot of sci-fi, and I'd never heard of these books. Despite being released in, I think it was the 80s, I'm fairly sure it was, and the early 80s at that, yeah, so 84 was this book. Though, 82 was a little, when it first copyrighted. Okay, so 82, when they started coming out, and it feels far more contemporary than that. It's more along the lines of the Stephen Erikson novels, and in fact I would be hugely surprised if these novels were not at the very least an inspiration for Stephen Erikson when he wrote those ones, because the similarities are staggering, especially in the Deadhouse Gates. So the Deadhouse Gates and this book, so Black Company and Shadows Linger, are both exceedingly similar to the Deadhouse Gates by Stephen Erikson. So if Stephen Erikson never read these novels, the similarities are strikingly similar. So you have essentially a group of hyper-powered people wandering around the world, and in this book they're called the Taken, who are essentially risen from the dead, who are immensely powerful people before they died, and then they died and were risen from the dead, and then fed more power. They're like super wizards, super fighters, super tough, super strong. 100 men can wail on them and they don't die. They're that kind of level of power. And then there's a company of mercenaries who are just normal people, basically facing up to the Taken. And well, in this novel, they're on the same side as the Taken, and they're fighting against the rebels, and who have also superpowered people called the Circle. And shenanigans happen, and they get betrayed roughly about 17 times during the book. But the best thing about it is they're working for the bad guys. They're working for the bad guys all the way through the book. But the point that's made in it is that the rebels, the good guys, essentially the good guys, are no better than the bad guys. It's literally just a different side of the same coin. The lady who they work for, who is essentially, the embodiment of all evil, except there's someone else above her, and the Taken are the bad guys. They steal, they murder, they are building an empire that will last forever, full of darkness and sin. You don't actually see a huge amount of darkness and sin on their side. There's a lot of wanting to dominate people and be in control. But the people on their side generally actually seem to be quite well taken care of. All the soldiers are always paid, they're not abused. The Black Company, again, is well paid, it's not abused. There's no men getting dragged off in the night to feed the souls of the undying. There's none of that from what is supposed to be the bad guy's side. The good guy's side the rebels, good guys side, is, constantly shown as being, not even just morally grey, but morally black. There's plenty of scenes where they're burning down villages for supplies and, having their way with the women folk. To show the fact that the Glencook seems to want to show in this, which is, good guys and bad guys are really just, who wins. They get to write the history, showing them in a better or worse light. He also kind of reinforces that with the fact the lady likes having Croker, who's the kind of the focus of the books, who is the historian of the Black Company, at her side, so he can see what she's doing and write them down in these annals, in the histories of the company. So at least, regardless what happens to her, there is a neutral history of what happens. So if the rebels win, he gets to show, well, she wasn't actually all bad. She was actually, she did nice things, good things. She wasn't the baby-eating monster that the rebels would immediately portray her as if they won. So that aspect of the book is jolly good, and I think is the main theme is not the right word because it's not something that runs through the book, but it's the kind of the only real moralistic point that's made in the novel. Is just purely about this. Everything else is just is more pulpy than some of the novels we've been reading. It's a good story. They cart their way across the world. There's wars being fought. I really like the style in that there's quite a lot that happens off screen. They're not bogged down by, who's a good example? Jordan, the Wheel of Time novels. In those books, he writes every single minute of every single day that happens, to the extent where one of the books, I think it's book 5 in the Wheel of Time, covers a grand total of a period of about 24 hours, 48 hours, I think it is, and that's ridiculous for a book. The Dark Tower kind of fell into similar issues in that a couple of the books spanned a very, very short space of time indeed, by basically outing the journey as much as the events that happened. Glencook he's very much like a GM in a role-playing game, in that he just skips the boring stuff. There's no need to know about the stomping across of the plains of fear, plains of death, plains of something or other, plains of panic. I think it's plains of panic. They get to the other side, and he said, and how it's written down is, we crossed the plains of panic. Loads of weird shit happened. So on to something interesting now. I really like that style. It keeps a bit of mystery and wonder in the world, while still having interesting things going on. I really like the style the book's written in. It feels far more contemporary than, a lot of the fantasy novels that were written, in the 80s and 90s. I'm thinking about the Jordans here, as a really good example of that. Even some of the pulp stuff, like the Warhammer novels. They are, they suffer the same problem. Excuse me, where every single minute of every single day is kind of written down. So having this being jumping just to the interesting points, and the Black Company covers, I don't know, it's 18 months, I think. This book covers the later books cover even more time periods. 6 years I think covers the second book. Because he just picks out the interesting things, and it's a more believable world because time passes. You don't have a full rebellion, rising up, being fought, hundreds of thousands of men dying and then being defeated over the course of a week. Because that's not how warfare works, at least fantasy warfare works. It works over a time scale of months or potentially years with the way rebellions happen. And this just makes it actually does it properly. It's so everything I've been reading recently, there's been the occasional little thing that annoys me, and frequently with a lot of these books it's that people have to be stupid for things to work. There's nothing in this book that logically doesn't fit. It's fantasy world, magic exists, yada yada yada, but he doesn't use magic as a crutch to get out of issues. There's no machinatic stasis. Everyone acts completely logically, especially the Black Company, when you realise that You know, they follow their code of honor all the way through the book, and he's so careful to make sure that they follow their code of honor all the way through. You know, he keeps working it logically. You know, logically they would do this, logically they would do that because of the honor and the code and everything else. So everything in the book is well thought out from all sides. The bad guys, the rebels, you know, all follow a logical course of action. The lady and her troops follow a logical course of action. The Black Company follows a logical course of action. So there's no, you know, acting stupid or machina ex deus to actually get around plot points. It works really, really well. What else to say about the book? The characterization. So this is where, again, I feel Steven Erikson borrowed a heap from these novels, because the characters are super similar to the sappers. The names of them I forget. I've got Deadhouse Skates is still to read, so I will remember the names. I can only remember the name of the mage in the Erikson novels, Quick Ben. But the characters in the Erikson novels are really, really similar to these. So, you know, they've all got daft names like, you know, Croaker and One Eye and Goblin and Raker and Raven, and so they're not normal people's names. You know, there's nobody called Eric and Bob. You know, so they're all ambiguous names for the people who possess them. They're all exceedingly well characterized. The fights between Goblin and One Eye are fantastic. Croaker is a very, very well imagined character. Even the captain and lieutenant, who get less screen time. You know, the captain is basically just this, you know, growling fiend who keeps everyone in line, despite the fact getting, you know, relatively little screen time for his importance to the company. It's fantastically well written. Everyone keeps in character. Everyone has really solid, well written characters. The characterization in it is fantastic. I'm shocked. I'm absolutely, in fact, appalled that I have never even heard of these books before now, because I should have read these 20 years ago. Easily should have read these 20 years ago. They are fantastic books. I've really, really enjoyed this. And as a little sneak peek, I'm most of the way through the third book now, you know, Shadows Linger and then White Rose, and I'm still really enjoying them. I'm really, really enjoying them. They're everything that I was worrying I wanted to get out of the novels, and I was worrying that I wasn't going to get. Again, I know I keep saying this, but this just makes me even more annoyed about the Dark Tower books, because again, this is everything I want out of a fantasy novel, and Stephen King should have written these books, because he could have, because he's got the characterization skills, he's got the world building skills, he showed them off, but he didn't write this book, damn it. He didn't write this book. So, yes, back to the usual one. Should you read this book? Should you read The Black Company? Yes, you definitely should. The Black Company is an excellent, excellent novel. It's fantastically well written. It's fantastically characterized. It's not a long book. It's only 320 pages long. The series has so far continued to be excellent. It's just a really, really good book. I highly recommend it. Highly, highly recommend this. If you like your fantasy novels, definitely read it. If you like your Steven Eriksons, you will absolutely adore this book. So definitely read it. Okay, so to try and keep back up on track with these, because we're still maybe 3 books behind, I think. I'm going to do another review tomorrow, and then I'll probably be back onto the Wednesday, Sunday schedule for the reviews. So tomorrow it will be Shadows Linger, which is the second book in the Black Company series, of which someone said there's 8, but I've only got 6 on my list. So there's 2 books missing. I may have to go and find them and read them anyway, because if they remain this good, then they're really, really good. But yes, tomorrow's review will be Shadow Lingers. That's tomorrow's one. Put this to the right side. Right, okay, cool. So, yes, to sum up, again, this is a charity read. We're reading 100 books in a year for the Archie Foundation. We've raised £750 so far. We're looking to raise at least another £250 more before the end of the year, before the end of the read. There's links to the Just Giving pages in the description of this video and the YouTube page. Please, please, please donate if you've never donated before. It's a fantastic charity support. Yes, so until tomorrow, thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for watching, and I will hopefully speak to you all again tomorrow. Good evening.